Okay. Let's actually make a point of doing this class advantage thing. While we wait for people to come in. Ooh, A looks really good. That's fine. That's fine. Love the double hits. Hey, Bean, how's it going, man? How many people are going to show up on a Sunday, but I'm going to try and wait until around like 10 people. Hey, SV. Hey, Eduardo. Coughing up a lung while logging cases. Oof. Sorry to hear you're not feeling well, man. Yeah, Cassie is live again. I've got the updated one pulled up. Just waiting on a couple more people. Cool. Quick. Let me put this online. Oh, I said I was going to do it when we got to 10. Just jumped over. All the same. Okay. We got a few. Let me go ahead and pause. Actually, I can keep the autoplay going in the background. I just have to turn off the feed. Duh. All right. Without interrupting the farming, let's give this a go. Hey, Troy. Welcome. Nope. Wrong speakers. Sorry, 1 second. That's weird. Did I turn them off? No, I didn't. Okay, my audio or my microphone is gonna freak out here for a second, everyone. So gonna mute. I use a KVM switch for my keyboard, my webcam, my microphone, and my headphones. And for some reason, the headphones specifically don't always transfer over. It's very odd. Anyway, let's try this again.
What is going on, Summoners? We're back here today with another Champion Deep Dive. Today, we're talking about Cassie Lang. So sit back and relax, because it's time to get into it. Cassie enters the contest with highly advanced PIM suit technology, granting her buff immunity, as well as immunity to all poison and shock effects. When charging her heavy attack, Cassie shrinks down, causing all incoming attacks to have a 100% chance to miss.
I want you to notice, sorry, I'll let that go just slightly further so it's not white screen. But, like, yes, she can miss all of Mangog's special too, but that had to be perfectly timed. And notice that the little counter on the screen turned red. So that is not something you're gonna want to do on a regular basis. Just remember that.
Starts each fight with her Pim fuel maxed out at 300. And when she shrinks, she consumes 100 fuel per second, allowing her to hold her heavy attack for an extended duration. But be careful, because running out of fuel overexerts Cassie and leaves her passively stunned for 2 seconds. Her Pim fuel recharges at a rate of 12 fuel per second while she's not performing a heavy attack. Now, Cassie generates dormant power stings while charging her heavy attack. And whenever the opponent misses due to Cassie being shrunk, she generates 2 additional dormant power sting charges. On the first hit of her heavy attack that lands, she inflicts 1 power sting debuff on the opponent for each dormant power sting gained. Unless otherwise stated, Cassie's personal power stings last for 10 seconds and deal a burst of direct damage if the opponent launches a special attack. These power stings are reapplied when the opponent launches a special attack and are paused during Cassie's special attacks.
It's so interesting because I may have told some of y'all the week that I went up to Vancouver for the holiday party, and there was like a few weeks in there where I was barely streaming at all, was also the week that we were finishing up playtests for Cassie and Ant-Man. And so like I'm remembering 3 or 4 different places the kit was in and how these abilities used to work. And it's weird being reminded of where they ended up, but that's a side thing. Welcome, Cyber, Slade, TJ, Illusion. Glad to have y'all here.
These scale with base attack only and max out at 30 stacks. Now, whenever Cassie causes the opponent's special attacks to miss by shrinking down, she gains 1 Pim particle. This also happens when she prevents a buff from activating due to an immunity. And performing a light-ending combo consumes all Pim particles to inflict a poison debuff, dealing direct damage over 2 seconds. This duration is increased by 2 seconds for each Pim particle she consumes. Also, if Cassie doesn't have Pim particles, this ability cannot be activated. Finally, while this poison is active, Cassie's taunt and power stings on the opponent fall off 75% slower, including effects that are already active. Now, let's check out her special attacks. The Special 1. The final hit of this attack inflicts a non-stacking taunt debuff for 12 seconds. Additionally, the opponent's combat power rate is increased by 300% while they're under 1.5 bars of power. Now, when she's fighting as a defender, on activation, Cassie inflicts a combo detonation debuff for 12 seconds. If her opponent does not build 14 hits in their combo meter before this debuff expires, they take a burst of direct damage, scaling with her base attack only. This debuff cannot be inflicted while it's already active, and is paused until Cassie finishes her Special 1. With the Special 2, if she activates this attack while her personal taunt is active, she'll deal guaranteed critical hits throughout the entire special attack. Also, she'll gain additional attack rating for each power sting on the opponent.
This one in particular makes me chuckle because I remember before the guaranteed crits were added, and I kind of feel for the designer because like we don't want to give guaranteed crits to everyone, but it was the single most consistent piece of feedback was, this feels really bad when it doesn't crit. This feels really bad when it doesn't crit. I did all the things. I have to go through a rotation and set this up. This feels really bad when it doesn't crit. And so it's really funny when the reaction to that is, all right, it's gonna crit.
The Special 3. At the end of this attack, she'll inflict a crush debuff on the opponent for 10 seconds. Furthermore, for the rest of the fight, Cassie becomes furious and grows in size. This effect cannot be triggered multiple times, and being furious grants Cassie the following abilities: an indefinite fury passive increasing her attack rating, additional physical resistance, and the duration of her personal power stings are increased by 20%. Now, let's check out her signature ability. When awakened, Cassie's pimp suit gets enhanced and grants her immunity to power steal. Also, her power stings have their stack limit increased by up to 10 debuffs. And she gains up to a 9% chance to evade her opponent's attacks.
She's gonna be so incredibly good in incursions, literally just as probably the single best answer to those stupid Mystic Doom bots. Anyway, hatred set aside, let's keep going.
And inflicts a power sting debuff that lasts for 14 seconds and deals a burst of direct damage if the opponent launches a special attack. Now let's take her out for a spin in the champion rotation.
So answering a couple questions, or comments as well. Yes, she is going to be good with power backs. That was called out in her development, and we accept it. No, the Special 3 size change does not trigger size-related glancing nodes. At least thus far. That is something that is exclusively controlled on like the tag level and not within the fight. So I don't think, and I don't think that's something that we would request going forward, because that would probably end up confusing a lot of people. It looks very cool. It makes her tankier. We like that part, but yeah, you're gonna need a different XL. Kind of wish repeating Special 3 would put her in a smaller phase, which has different bonuses. I mean, she already has the smaller phase illusion. That's literally what the heavy charge is. That's the point, is she has both the small and the large, and the heavy and the Special 1 give her the small, the Special 2 and Special 3 give her the large. Hey, Char, how's it going?
To begin, attack the opponent, then charge your heavy attack to make them miss their opening combo, and connect with your heavy to inflict as many power sting debuffs as possible. From here, rush to your Special 1, and launch when available to place a taunt debuff on the opponent and push them back towards the wall.
See, this part I don't necessarily agree with. It's possible Mike did enough testing that this is actually faster in Battlegrounds, but unless speed is absolutely your top priority, I think it's better to push the opponent to a little bit higher so that your heavy is actually what pushes them over a bar, so that you have as much uptime on the power stings as possible, because then it's probably going to be pretty easy for you to get to your Special 1 quickly. Maybe something changed in the last few playtests that I wasn't able to miss, but I think for War in particular, that's just something to keep in mind, is that the rotation is probably going to be a little bit different if you're going for maximum reliability as opposed to I need to get this down before my opponent's Human Torch is done.
Repeat the process of baiting out the opponent's special attacks until your pimp fuel is reset back at 300. When ready, push the opponent back into the corner while they're below a bar of power, and immediately charge your heavy attack to make them miss and stack on even more power sting debuffs. While you're baiting the opponent's special attacks, make sure to also build up your pin particles using dexterity up to the max of 6 stacks. And now that you're ramped up, perform a light ending combo to consume your pin particles and place your poison debuff on the opponent, then immediately launch your Special 1 to place your taunt with an extended duration. To finish it all off, build up to your Special 2 and launch before your taunt expires to see a crushing amount of big yellow numbers fly across the screen.
Yeah, and see, that's another thing where maybe in Battlegrounds this is more efficient, but I think you're going to have a lot of people losing power stings because they don't want to activate the poison until they get to maximum pin particles. But the thing is, if I'm remembering correctly, the way it's worded is while the poison is active, they fall off slower. So it actually, more slowly, it actually affects the tick speed, not the duration. And therefore, having the poison up at all is important. And so, even getting the poison on there when you only have 1 or 2 Pym particles is fine. You throw the special one, you get, like, timing the special one so you can get to the special 2 is extremely important. But I think just getting the poison up at all, because it's a linear scaling on the duration, is all that really matters. Because you just want to make sure that you have the power stings and you don't lose them. That's way more important than it all being one poison. I think that she's kind of like the hood in that, where it's like you can use multiple heavy detonations, right? That's always one of my #1 pieces of advice for the hood. You do not need to detonate all 45 bullets in a single heavy. So just something to keep in mind here.
Alternatively, once you're more comfortable using Cassie and managing her Pym effects, you can use her heavy attack to miss the defender's special attacks and build your power stings and Pym particles strategically, while consistently keeping your poison debuff active on the opponent as you work your way through the fight. Now, let's check out some of her notable synergies. He's so ugly. I love him! With Toad on the team, whenever the opponent activates a special attack while suffering from one of Cassie's personal power stings, they're inflicted with 1 additional power sting debuff. As for Toad, striking the opponent's block with his tongue attacks inflicts 2 paralytic poisons instead of 1. One bug happy family. With Ant-Man or Wasp on the team, triggering Miss grants Cassie 1 additional dormant power sting. With Ant-Man, while the opponent is suffering from Ant-Man's personal unsteady debuff, the duration of all of his personal debuffs are increased by 20%. And as for Wasp, striking the opponent with a guaranteed critical hit grants Wasp an additional 3 hits in her combo mode. How's the...
That was one that we were talking about where it's like, what do we need to give Wasp? And I'm so glad we arrived on this. I think it was a bit of a team discussion, but like because so many of Wasp's abilities scale off of combo, this is just, it's so good. I love that synergy so much for her. Really is going to give her a lot of utility.
The weather down there. With Sentinel on the team, all champions gain plus 5% attack rating for each extra large champion on the team. Sick kicks! With America Chavez or Quicksilver on the team, all Synergy members have their attack rating increased by 5% during any attacks that involve their shoes. Grow big or go home. With Immortal Hulk, Mephisto, Apocalypse, Kamala Khan, or Groot on the team, all Synergy members gain plus 6% block proficiency and block penetration for each Synergy member present. Did you see a Synergy that grew on you? Thinking of a new Synergy team? Let us know your thoughts below. And let's discuss.
See that one right there? He had 9 fuel left. This is exactly what I'm talking about. Another 1/10 of a second. 1 more tick, and that's a passive stun. By all means, practice your heavy counters with Cassie. Use her like Tigra where you can, but do it carefully. If you let it become your default, like it is with Tigra, oh, I have the spacing here, I should go for a heavy. You are going to get wrecked. So just be very, very careful. It is far more important to heavy strategically and get your power stings up and then keep them there than it is to heavy every time you conceivably can. But we're pretty much done, right?
Thank you for watching this champion deep dive for Cassie Lang.
Alright, let's catch up on chat. What's her block proficiency? It is not particularly high, and that's because like the special 3 is supposed to be something that really spikes how tanky she is. Remember that physical resistance contributes to your damage reduction on block. So the big amount of physical resistance she gets while she has a Fury passive is really going to go a long way towards effective block proficiency. But you do kind of need to earn it if you're planning on blocking a lot with her in a longer fight. Hey, Jason, how's it going? Yeah, it's very good for Wasp. Does the champ designer also come up with the synergy names? Yes. And I think most of us go for at least, like, one joke one each time. Some of us go for mostly joke names. Some of us lean a little more lore heavy. It's kind of a personal preference. This is like an infomercial. I think you've finally grasped the point of the deep dives, user. Currency on miss makes you sad. Nah, I'm gonna come over there and spray you with a water bottle. Her miss is significantly stronger than Tigra's. It applies to all attacks, projectile, or contact. She needs a limiter. Doesn't seem reliable for Alliance War Mangog aspect of evolution. No, absolutely not. Not a good place to use her. I never said it was a bad idea. I'm just sad. I know, and I'm spritzing you for being sad. Because you're smarter than that. Alright, let's move over to the other one. Yeah, her miss is extremely, extremely strong. And it's definitely good, right? Like, it's not that I want you to ignore that ability, it's just you have to use it more strategically. With Tigra, it's kind of like, this is how I play the character, this is how I duel, is once I have this spacing down, I'm going to do this literally every time without thinking about it, right? Because it is always the correct choice. Cassie's is stronger, but it has that limiter on it, so you're going to have to be a little bit strategic with it. Sometimes it's going to be the right choice to cause that miss, and sometimes you want to save it up for something else. It's going to be something you pick up as you play her. But it's really cool, and I like how it turned out. Happy to shred him with Valkyrie. Oh, there's a line in his kit that you have not gotten to, Char. We'll talk about that soon. The Ant-Man relic is very good for her. Right, theater mode, and let's go.
What is going on, Summoners? We're back here today with another Champion Deep Dive. Today, we're talking about Ant-Man Future. So sit back and relax, because it's time to get into it. Ant-Man enters the contest with a new unique ability, Disintegration, which deals direct damage to the...
Oh my god, I thought he re-recorded this. Oh, that's so funny. Okay, for those of you who don't know, the debuff that Punisher 2099 applies on his special 3 is called Disintegration. And this is even better because in the CCP we were talking about reduced combat power rate and how it's a really powerful ability. And Simula posted an old video of his with Punisher 2099, and Mike responded to it and goes, "Oops, I just recorded the deep dive and referred to Disintegration as a new ability. I really thought that meant that he went back and removed it. I'm sorry, I will get over this in a minute, but I'm dying." Oh, that's really funny. No, Chart. We'll get to it. But basically, he doesn't like to be bled.
The opponent while it's active, while also reducing their combat power rate by a given potency. He also has a 10% chance to glance on all incoming attacks that land or strike into his block. However, if the opponent has an active Pierce effect, his personal glancing abilities fail to activate. At the start of each fight, Ant-Man inflicts a 14-second encroaching power detonation passive on the opponent that begins indefinitely paused, but is unpaused when striking the opponent. While defending, it's also unpaused as Ant-Man is being attacked. When this expires, he drains.
If you're wondering why it starts paused and why you have to hit him for this to go down, we talked about it a few times, and one of them is simply don't build Quake, right? Because it is really, really easy to accidentally build Quake when you have something that is on a timer and does damage. But the other thing is that we were actually talking about, like, in strategy games. I think I'm actually the one who brought up, I play Total War Warhammer, and in games like that, when your generals have abilities, some of those abilities are really strong, but to make sure that you don't just, like, walk in, drop a bomb on the opponent, and then safely walk your general back out, a lot of them recharge only while in melee. This is kind of that. And I like it. I think it's cool, cool little ability.
40% of their current power and inflicts a power detonation passive for 18 seconds. While the opponent is suffering from a power detonation passive, all of his hits inflict a 15% potency instant disintegration, dealing direct damage to the opponent.
So, just a reminder on the potency part. The potency for disintegration is how much the combat power rate is reduced. So every hit that inflicts an instant disintegration is also granting the opponent 15% less power. Now that is filtered through combat power rate. So against a rank 5 that has 120% base combat power rate, it's not actually 15% less power, it's closer to 10% less power. It's like 12. But the point is that that is happening on each individual hit as well as the damage. Hey, Paul, how's it going?
Ant-Man's power detonation passive deals direct damage upon expiring naturally. However, this effect is removed early if the affected champion uses a special attack. Whenever this effect expires for any reason, he re-inflicts his encroaching power detonation passive on the opponent. And if this power detonation expires naturally, he inflicts a 15% potency disintegration debuff, dealing direct damage over 24 seconds. This debuff is paused during Ant-Man's special attacks. Ant-Man also starts each fight with 1 nano armor up buff, which increases the chance for incoming attacks to glance by 6%. These buffs count as armor up effects, increase his armor rating, and can stack indefinitely up to 5 times.
Yes, combat power rate reduction does stack additively. So you add up all the sources of combat power reduction and then subtract them from the 110, 120 that the character has. So I forget already what his other disintegration is. I feel like it adds up to 90. But then the Petrify Mastery reduces that further. Collar Tech reduces that further. You can get an absolute ton of combat power reduction.
Any additional nano armor buffs gained above 5 last for 4 seconds and expire 1 at a time, maxing out at 10 stacks.
Can anyone tell that this was the same designer as Guardian?
Additionally, all nano armor-up effects are paused during both champions' special attacks. Ant-Man gains 2 nano armor buffs when he intercepts the opponent. He gains 1 nano armor buff when interrupting the opponent's heavy attack, and he also gains 1 each time he glances a hit.
Now, notice on that heavy interruption thing, remember how earlier he talked about how you don't get the disintegration debuff if they remove the power detonation passive by throwing a special. And so the reason that that heavy interrupt trigger matters so much is that if you are trying to get the opponent to not throw a special, you're probably going to be baiting heavies because intercepting just isn't safe. So that's a really important way to ramp him. It's easy to read the kit and go, oh, okay, I ramp by intercepting. And you can, but in a lot of fights, the heavy interrupt is actually going to be more important. Which is which? Power detonation and disintegration. The detonation is the one that looks like an explosion and is passive. The disintegration is the one that looks like this person with the 3 little lightning bolts on them and is a debuff, which has the white border around it.
Attacks that intercept Ant-Man remove one of his nano armor up buffs and cannot glance. Whenever a nano armor up buff fails to trigger or is removed for any reason, it is replaced with a passive of the same potency. Nano armor up passive.
Reminder that by default, passive armor ups cannot be removed by armor break, which is why often you are just going to need to try and avoid causing this person to glance and wait out their stuff. He is a very annoying stall.
Cannot be removed by armor break effects and count as armor up buffs for all of his personal abilities. Speaking of which, while Ant-Man has 6 or more nano armor up buffs, he activates his Surging Swarm, increasing his attack rating and making his opponent behave more aggressively. Additionally, his Encroaching Power Detonation passive expires 200% faster. Finally, if his opponent strikes him with a combo-ending attack that happens to glance, they're inflicted with a stun debuff for 1.5 seconds. Now, let's check out his special attacks. If Ant-Man has over 2 bars of power when completing a light-ending combo, his...
Does armor break interaction also ignore the potency like Nimrod? No. The armor breaks still happen. It's just that it's replaced by another armor up with the same potency. So, like, let's say his completely theoretical numbers. His base armor is 500. He has 1 armor up. It's giving him 300. So he's at 800, right? You hit him with a 400-point armor break. So you remove the 300, reduce by 400, and then he gains a passive that goes up another 300. And so you're at 400 again. Like, so the armor breaks still work. Armor breaks increase damage against him. It's just that you still have that armor bonus on him, and he can still cause glance.
Current highest level special attack is disabled for 0.5 seconds. The Special 1. When the second hit of this attack lands or strikes into the opponent's block, Ant-Man inflicts a 15% potency disintegration debuff, dealing direct damage over 24 seconds. This debuff is paused during Ant-Man's special attacks, scales with base attack only, and maxes out at 2 stacks. Additionally, the final hit does not grant the opponent power. Instead, it drains 15% of a bar of power for each disintegration debuff on the opponent. With the special...
So a couple things to talk about there. First off, I kind of paused in the middle of it, so apologies, but note that you can choose which specials you throw with a given amount of power. If you have 3 bars, you can use the special 3 or the special 2. If you have 2 bars, you can use the special 2 or the special 1. It's a really cool piece of utility he has that a lot of mystics would kill for. Additionally, note the disintegrations, again, can stack. Those will also stack with the passive disintegrations as far as combat power rate reduction. And the power drain on the special 1 per disintegration allows you to stack things even further, because it means that you are keeping the opponent below a bar of power. They cannot get rid of the power detonation passive on themselves, and therefore you're going to get another disintegration. So there's some really nice ramp with this guy. So these buffs, if removed and getting replaced with passive, seems like a new thing with newer champs. I mean, kind of, but like it's more just that it's not a thing with older champs, right? The same way that we add new abilities all the time. It's like if you go back below or before a certain point, nobody had Cold Snap, nobody had Incinerate, nobody had Shock. This is a new thing we've started doing as a light resistance to armor break, nullify, etc. But that doesn't mean it's going to be on all characters going forward. It just depends on kind of who we want them to be countered by, right? Awakened CGR can nullify, but a nullify is removing the armor ups for any reason, Jackie. So if you Fate Seal away 10 of his armor up buffs, if you can somehow get your judgments to trigger through all that glancing, then he's still going to have 10 passives, and you're probably not going to get much damage in. So technically CGR can fight him, but I would not want to do it. Your single armor break has to have more potency than his single armor up. Yes, for the damage to go up, that is correct, Slate. Does armor break count as a nullify? That is a very complicated question. In front of the ability, no. And what I mean by that is being immune to armor break does not mean you're immune to nullify. Being immune to nullify does not mean you're immune to armor break, because an armor break is not a nullify for the purposes of prevention. Similarly, Mystic Ward and Divine Barrier do not stop armor break, right? But on the back end, armor break has a invisible nullify in it. So armor break does trigger Mystic Dispersion. Armor break does trigger return policy, that kind of stuff. That doesn't really matter here, though, because the method of removal doesn't matter. It's just that when an active buff goes away for any reason other than expiring naturally, he gets a passive. You don't have to keep track of whether it's an armor break, a nullify, or an omnom. None of that matters. It's just when it goes away, he gets the passives. How would Armor Shatter interact with his abilities? I can't remember off the top of my head if he has something that stops it, but I think if you land Armor Shatter, it stops the armor ups from triggering in the first place. And so you're probably good to go for a while. I'm sure we discussed that in development, but it's been a while.
Special, too. Each hit inflicts a 10...
Oh, yeah, no, thank you, Saragos. I knew there was something. Right. So Armor Shatter is hit by the same, or is hit for the same reason that Neutralize is hit. It is an extremely unfortunate casualty, because honestly, it would kind of, if we'd gone back and done this again, maybe we could have carved out Armor Shatter, but we didn't. And so I believe Armor Shatter is functionally an armor break plus an armor up specific Neutralize. And because Tigra and Rintra weren't going to be the best answers to him, this unfortunately does hit Arcus and Medusa. It's a bummer.
Percent potency, instant disintegration on the opponent, dealing direct damage. This ability gains plus 100% potency for each disintegration debuff on the opponent.
I don't remember if he's metal.
The Special 3. At the end of this attack, Ant-Man gains 10 nano armor up buffs. Also, he'll inflict a non-stacking 15% potency disintegration debuff on the opponent, dealing direct damage over 60 seconds. Now, let's check out his signature ability.
But I will point out that if he is metal, and Magneto stops him from triggering his buffs, that's going to count, and you're going to get a passive.
When awakened, incoming bleed and incinerate effects suffer up to 90% reduced duration. Additionally, when a bleed or incinerate effect expires naturally on Ant-Man, he gains a non-stacking self-repair buff, healing up to 3% of his missing health over 6 seconds. This buff is lost early if Ant-Man is stunned.
So note that this is missing health. It will get stronger as the fight goes on. Valkyrie can definitely take him, because you just have to make sure that you're ramping properly, right? Like the way a lot of people play Valkyrie is they just go to 3 Pierce and they throw a special 2 and they go, cool, I'm good to go. But I think against this guy, because he's going to constantly have that self-repair, you're probably going to want to make sure that you flow through things a little bit more. You're going to want to make sure that you throw the special 1, you reverse your combo a few times, even if it's all into block. You're going to want to make sure that you have a few bulwarks so that when you finally do throw the special 2, the Fury is larger. Because remember, Valkyrie's Fury scales with her bulwarks and her Pierce. You want both, and then you should be able to close things out against this guy just fine.
And when Ant-Man would lose more than 10% of his max health from a single source, he reduces the damage to 10% of his max health and gains a self-repair buff, healing up to 5% of his max health over 12 seconds. This damage protection will not activate when Ant-Man is hit with a special 3. Now, let's take him out for a spin in the champion rotation. To begin, focus on intercepting the opponent or interrupting their heavy to gain at least 6 nano armor buffs and activate Surging Swarm. From here, slowly attack the opponent to let your encroaching power detonation expire, draining the opponent's power below 1 bar. Once your power detonation passive is on the opponent, slow play while building to about 2.5 bars of power and keeping your nano armor buffs high. Once your power detonation is nearly expired, perform a light ending combo to disable your special 2 and immediately throw a special 1 to inflict a disintegration debuff and drain the opponent's power. Continue using your special 1 in this way until you have 3 disintegration debuffs active, while taking advantage of the opponent's reduced combat power rate with aggressive gameplay to build to your special 2 and launch when ready to nuke the opponent with increased potency instant disintegration. Now, let's check out some notable synergies.
But that's the thing, Illusion, is that it's not actually cutting it that close. Because you have control over the combat power. You know you're not going to push to special 3 in this way. And that's why he also ramps on heavy punishes, like I talked about earlier. Like, it works pretty darn well just because of how the AI performs. But the thing is, even if the AI decides to be rude and throw their specials, he can take a Bishop special 2 to the face because it'll be capped at 10% and he'll heal back. And if Bishop throws a special 1 into block, he'll heal from the incinerates. So he's a really good counter for a number of characters off of that kind of stuff.
Bug Speak.
It looks harder than it is, Luke. It's a skill that you should honestly be working on anyway, in my opinion, is doing that whole 4 hits, block immediately, beta heavy thing. That's something that everyone should be working on. It's the best way to fight Null. It's an important part of fighting Absorbing Man. It comes up all the time. If you want to feel like you're in control in this game, it's a good thing to know how to do. And so, here's a reason to learn.
Ant-Man, Wasp, or Yellow Jacket on the team, Ant-Man Future cannot miss while the opponent is inflicted with one of his personal power detonation effects. As for Ant-Man Classic, his unsteady debuffs gain plus 25% duration. As for Wasp, her shock potency is increased by 25%. And with Yellow Jacket, each time he inflicts a Power Sting debuff on the opponent, he'll also inflict them with a physical vulnerability debuff for 10 seconds. Deadliest Menace of Yesterday. With Odin, or Ultron Prime on the team, shock effects inflicted onto Ant-Man suffer minus 60% duration. With Odin, when he's inflicted with a shock effect, he gains an indefinite shock resist buff, increasing his shock resistance by 50%. And as for Ultron, his bleed and degeneration debuffs gain plus 30% duration. Call of the Past. With Cable.
Want to call out, remember that Ultron's Cauterize scales with those bleeds and degens, so them lasting 30% longer is more than a 30% damage boost. That is a very powerful synergy.
Cable or Bishop on the team, whenever the opponent gains a prowess effect, Ant-Man gains 1 nano armor up buff. With Cable, each time he's inflicted with an Incinerate effect, future Incinerate durations are reduced by 10%, maxing out at 50%. And as for Bishop, he gains plus 20% Incinerate debuff potency. Did you see a synergy that had you sizing up the competition? Thinking of a new synergy team? Let us know your thoughts below, and let's discuss. Thank you for watching this champion deep dive for Ant-Man Future. And hey, if you liked the video and want to see more, click subscribe, like, comment, and share. And remember, We'll see you in the battle round.
4-hit block bait is amazing for controlling the fight against a lot of champs, yeah. Wonder how Black Cat would do against him. The thing is that she would get her failure damage unless he glanced. Because that's the thing, is that whenever... this is starting to get into some complicated stuff, but basically, whenever the ability failed due to chance, like the dice roll behind the screens was too low, Black Cat would do her damage with the sabotage. Whenever the ability failed due to ability accuracy reduction, on the other hand, where she would normally get her sabotage, I think he would instead proc an armor up. It would be a passive, but then that might glance. So she could still get credit for when she prevents an armor up buff, but the passive would definitely happen and the glancing could happen. And the more that those passives happen, the more it could cascade out of control for her. So she probably wouldn't be the fastest. But it does seem possible. Because there's a very short list of champions that are actually the fastest against this dude. Hey, Blood, how's it going? Yeah, exactly, Slate. Does that shock resistance buff count towards Odin's personal buff damage? Oh yeah, I honestly forgot about this one. Yes, it would. Makes Odin a little bit like people with Odin pre-fights. Very cool. Like Ultron wasn't good enough. I know. I think we're probably going to need a bit of a moratorium on synergies for him for a while. Not kidding. Unconfirmed, Magnus. But yeah, I do like both of the champs this month quite a bit. Glance is a really annoying ability. We need champs that can get around it. That's the thing, though, is that champs that can just blanket not glance is... The reason that glancing is so annoying is in part because it's in that category of mechanics that you can kind of think of as dungeon master tools. It's like the quest team needs the ability periodically to say your stuff doesn't work, and glancing is one of the most elegant ways to do that. We have shifted towards making glancing more interactable. This one scales with a currency and is prevented by Pierce. Ant-Man's and the most recent War Global both were dependent on debuffs, so they could be purified or otherwise removed. We're trying to make glancing interactable, but I would expect more along the lines of carve outs and play arounds than just a champion that's flat out immune to it. Because that's kind of like a champion that's flat out immune to direct damage, and that's not actually a good thing. And she has bleeds. It would be nice if she didn't glance and she'd nuke him for failing the regens from triggering. I think the regens can fail just fine, Char, yeah. I don't remember testing that, but yeah. Yeah, you might get 2 triggers on every hit. That could be cool. You would have to really stay on them, though, because the... Oh, that would be such a mess. Because the regens are not triggering on hit. The regens are triggering when the bleeds expire, so you would need to be landing a hit in the frame that the bleeds expire. To prevent the regens, so that's maybe not super likely. Did I get to work on Ant-Man? He is not my character. He is the first full character from this designer, I think, since Null. They're a very good designer, but they kind of took a break for a while, and they were the driving force behind the first 12 relics and the feature in general. Um, and as you can tell, they really went for it with this one. I think he's going to be an awesome addition. You're probably also going to hear me referring to him as Zane quite a bit because that's his name, and I like it better than navigating the web of different Ant-Mans that we have. Magnus Mutant class has not been the best in much longer than a year. It's unfortunate because it's kind of like there are lore reasons for the class being taken down. Like the persecution is literally part of their storyline, and because of that, we get like Ultron's really good against mutants, Nimrod's really good against mutants, Apocalypse is really good against mutants. The Corvus one is just kind of a like, wait, why did we do that again? But the others make sense in the lore, and yeah, it's unfortunate. We have a bit of a hole to dig ourselves out of with that one because the odds of us going back and changing Nimrod and Apocalypse to eat up less design space are pretty darn low. Want them both, honestly? Me too, MSD. I think they both have quite a bit of use. Later, Illusion. Yeah, Magnus, he's very good. We had degen resistance for those degen nodes. We have degen resistance, not direct damage resistance. That's actually something that was changed when some of those characters came out, Slade, specifically for that reason. Yeah, I was trying to. Yeah, because I guess spam was first. Thank you. I was trying to remember whether it was spam or Mr. Negative, but hadn't followed it through. So yes, um, that's exactly why I said direct damage and not degen. Nope, Apocalypse's burst damage is not direct damage. It's actually physical burst damage. Common misconception. Sounds good, Sarah Ghost. Yeah, red numbers is not necessarily always direct damage, Luke. That's what I mean by the common misconception. It can be direct damage. Gallon's burst, when the harvest completes, is direct damage. But you also have things like Absorbing Man is a really good case study in this. He literally has physical and energy burst damage, right? Apocalypse does bursts of physical. Tigra does bursts of physical. God, there's so many that do bursts of energy, but my mind is blanking right now. Diablo's Special 2 is definitely one. Does anyone want to help me out with others? America Chavez is another. Okay, that's enough. We got a couple. Clairvoyant. All right, moving on. What damage is it that Gladiator Hulk reduces? Gladiator Hulk is different because he's not looking for a damage type. He's looking for specific. Guardian's a bit different MSD because that's typed specifically as shock. And so it's not like pure energy. It can also be reduced by shock resistance. That's why I didn't go there. But Gladiator Hulk is looking specifically for passives, which that's a different axis. Damage can be energy damage, and it can come from a debuff or a passive. It's a separate thing. Like Guardian, like I said, or like MSD brought up, Guardian's instant bursts are passives They are energy damage, and they are shocks. They are all three. Now, the last two are damage types. So, shock, energy can coexist. Technically, we could build a physical shock if we wanted, but that's such cognitive dissonance, I don't think that's ever going to happen. But then passive versus debuff versus buff is an entirely different attribute, if that makes sense. So Glad Hulk is looking for the attribute of the damage source rather than the damage type itself. Yeah, Hercules is also physical. Yes, physical resist does work against Apocalypse. That's actually something that he runs into occasionally. Are you guys planning to have other colors of damage? We've talked about that a couple times, and we've basically leaned towards no, because there's kind of already enough going on in the HUD. And this is, at the end of the day, a mobile game. Like, that kind of extra information and clarity is really important for MMOs, like, World of Warcraft or something. It's important for a lot of console and computer RPGs, but it might get out of hand on a phone screen. And we also are already not super friendly to colorblind people. We probably need to work on that. And so adding a bunch more colors that would then need to be factored into that scheme is probably not something we're going to do soon, if that makes sense. What is Spider-Man Supreme? Almost certainly energy. Most mystics are. Darkhawk is the same as Guardian after the special 3? Correct. Darkhawk is doing shock instant passives. Domino's crit fails are all energy? Yes, one of the reasons Guardian is good against her. Oh, so not your actual last message, Slade, but the one before that. Ghost and Kitty counter those direct damage stuff. That's different. Ghost and Kitty do hurt the game because they aren't looking for a damage type. They just, quote, take no damage in those specific circumstances. I think that if Kitty were subject to rebalancing right now, her base kit would probably be something more like a 50% damage reduction, and then wall phasing would be like 80 instead of it being, what is it currently, 80 and then 100, because taking no damage at all is kind of dumb. It's like for something that's on that often, right? It's just silly. But yes, that is exactly why she is a problem, because she just turns off everything. Yeah, CMM's burst damage is definitely energy for sure. Colossus's direct damage? That I don't remember. I know he does that on parries. Where's our boy? Yep, Colossus is direct damage. Hey, Zach. Everything is red outside of basics and crits. Yeah, I know. But the problem is that we probably could do a like energy physical direct differential on the client side. It would need to still be readable, so we would have to agree on colors. But then, like, as far as it's being readable, you're probably into the territory of, I don't know, maybe energy is. Well, that's the thing. If energy is purple, then do people start associating that with the Mystic class? Because that's the other problem with color coding we have. Sorry, we're kind of starting to go down a game design rabbit hole here. As well as a UI UX rabbit hole. So we're getting a little bit outside my expertise as well. Sounds like we're naming every character in their energy or in their damage type. Little bit. Kind of got there. How does Atuma interact with Glance? It reduces his attack, it prevents him from critting, and he gains 100% extra ability accuracy. So he will also apply more of his Thorns damage. You definitely can use Atuma for future Ant-Man. And the thing is, because Atuma purifies stun debuffs, you can even finish your combos against him while he's in his super mode because you'll get stunned and you'll purify it into a concussion, and then you will continue to ramp your offensive Thorns damage. Which is yet another reason that I keep saying I think Atuma will age really well. And that also kind of goes back to the earlier thing we were saying about ways of interacting with Glance indirectly, as opposed to just being immune to it. Atuma is a really good example of that. There's a billion interactions in this game. Absolutely. It's the reason that I have played it this long. It's the reason that I was happy to apply for a design job at it. Like, it's a fighting game, which I've always enjoyed, but most fighting games, I get to a certain point, and I'll admit, you can call this a failing of mine if you want. I will get to a certain point in most fighting games, and then I will just kind of go, all right, to go further, I would have to spend hours ironing out my combos, my timings, getting my frame stuff perfect. And I don't think I want to do that. I would rather go play a different game. I would rather pick up another fighting game and kind of get to know those characters because I tend to connect to characters. Or I would rather pick up an RPG, right? Um, that's kind of how my personal journey went with these things. But MCOC holds me because it's not just a fighting game. It's kind of actually a fairly shallow fighting game that becomes a deep game because of all these champion interactions, because of all these abilities. And so that's why I care. Because like there is skill execution, which is fun, but I feel like I can get to that 95th percentile of execution. I don't have to be MSD. I don't have to be quite as good as him. I can do pretty much the same things as him by getting to that 95th percentile and then being good with my character interactions. I can plan my team ahead of time. I can plan who to bring, how to use them, what to lean into. And that's why I enjoy being here. Why did my stream freeze? That's very odd. Is the capture card being weird? But you're not even getting audio. That's super weird. And it doesn't even restart if I unplug the HDMI cord. What the heck? This has never happened to me before. It is interesting to hear that you had the same experience with MSD or with Smash MSD. And yeah, I know you and I have talked about this with Mortal Kombat Slay. Love Atuma's utility, just wish his damage was a tiny bit more reachable. I understand that. I think his damage is enough though. Like he's not going to be a great battlegrounds attacker in most metas or in most matchups, but I think he's going to shine in enough places because of how weird his utility is that this was the correct way to because like the fact that his damage is just going to like double against glancing characters is already really interesting to me. It's I don't know. We'll see. It's not that there's no chance we tune up his damage, but there's definitely a reason it is this way. Um, and I think that he's going to age very well. Yeah, I agree. I may say your name wrong Mom. Um, but yeah, there I've tried a few others and they haven't quite been the same. And that's like I like getting better at the game. I like picking up skills, but for the most part I like picking up skills that carry between characters. And we also like in our design reviews, that's something we talk about where it's like this even came up with Absorbing Man because there was a point at which I had the morph charges, but they were spent automatically. I talked about this a bit in my interview with Vega, and I had the light interrupts, but the piece of feedback I got was sorry, hold on. I'm going to unplug my capture card and plug it back in real quick. Um, and I had the light interrupts, but the feedback I got, which was super valid, was I don't feel like there is a way for me to get better at this character without getting better at the game as a whole. And that is valid, right? Like, you want, in my opinion, you do want to get better at the game as a whole, but that's kind of like an ongoing project for most of us. I want to get better at close parries, which, by the way, Slay, is something I have been working on. Uh, I do think that my magic solos in my Eternity of Pain path last night benefited from that. It's something I've been very careful with. But like that is an example of a personal weakness of mine. That's something Slay's better at than me. And so like those are ongoing projects. But you want to be able to have those ongoing projects as well as mastery of individual characters. You want to have those multiple axes for everyone. Yeah, I do get where you're coming from. Atuma could have hit a little harder. He just scared us. Shuri and Atuma are next on the balancing program. Yeah, I believe they are up next. I have no idea what's up with OBS. Is this because I skipped an update? Are you rebelling? I may have to go get lunch and come back later. But I have really enjoyed this stream, and that's why I haven't stopped it yet. It's been a good discussion. I understand why people aren't sure on Shuri, and that was it was an unintentional pun, but God, that was a bad one. Um, the thing about Shuri is that I encourage people to think about her as more than her damage ceiling. Oh, I'm curious to see where you're going with this MSD, but I'm going to keep talking for now. Because her damage ceiling is fine. Like, it looks good in... It looks good in, what you call it? In Abyss stuff. But it's really tempting to look at that and then go, okay, but it's so much less in normal fights that it's bad. But the thing is that, like, you're not gonna... The minute you understand you're not going to ramp to a ton of critical shock passives in a normal fight, then maybe you start caring about her other abilities. Like the fact that she can deal guaranteed critical hits, excuse me, and has the highest critical and has one of the highest critical damage multipliers in the game. So all of a sudden she can actually become a short form big yellow numbers character. And then there's the fact that she doesn't get the dex buff. So you can use her against mystics where you couldn't use somebody else. And then there's the fact that she has all non-contact attacks, so that she's a cord counter. She's an, I believe she's an electro counter. She's definitely an Atuma counter. Like, there's a lot of unique abilities to her. She's a domino counter as well, that I think got overlooked because people were just focused on chasing a ton of critical shock passives. It's it's possible her damage needs to come up. But yeah, okay. I'm really vindicated that I said all that, and then your message came through for me. I know there's a bit of a lag for those of y'all listening, but that's read what MSD wrote because I agree. It's kind of what I just said. We'll see. It's possible her damage needs to come up, but I think part of it is that people just haven't really clocked that you need to change her playstyle for different game modes yet. Um, Newest skill I'm working on is dexing with the right thumb for chugs. Yeah, that is one I've started on recently too, Char. I am not great at it yet. Yeah, Luke, it is nice that there are a lot of skills, but not all skills that carry between characters. And I've always liked characters that kind of teach you extra things about the game. That's part of the reason Absorbing Man works the way he does. Because to really play him at his maximum, if you weren't doing heavy canceling and light intercepts, you're going to start thinking about it. Why didn't they go with Panther Shuri? So it's not just a like spoiler thing, ASV. The other thing to remember is just that we only have so much interplay with Marvel. Um, they will give us concept art months ahead of time when nobody knows anything about the movie, and we may not even be able to see them in action. So, like, we knew that there were going to be water bombs for Atuma, but we didn't necessarily have action shots of him, right? I don't know that we had video of Shuri. I've been in a couple brainstorms. This isn't a spoiler, right? Everybody knows that there is a movie coming out next summer. I've been in some of those meetings where we look at some of those characters, and we don't necessarily have video for them. And so we do as much as we can, but sometimes just given how far ahead our process is, we can't line everything up perfectly with how they're going to fight in the movie. What changes would I make to Atuma? I don't think I would make any changes to Atuma right now, honestly. Um, and part of that is because I was very vocal in his design process. He's not mine, but I think I bugged his designer enough that like he's not one of my children, so to speak, but I definitely went to a lot of his birthday parties if we're continuing that metaphor. I like Atuma a lot. And I think that his design is really clean. I've talked about this before, but if you start with I want to reverse ability accuracy, I think that Atuma is like a perfect case study in spinning out a single concept into a kit. You start with I want to reverse ability accuracy, and then you go, okay, how do I build a character out of increased ability accuracy? Because most of our abilities either happen or they don't. And then you go, okay, well, duh. I want abilities to happen multiple times if ability accuracy is high enough. That makes perfect sense. And then I want to be able to increase my own ability accuracy. So I'm going to put concussions on myself. That makes perfect sense. And then, okay, now I have a bunch of abilities that can trigger a lot. But then how do I do duration? Oh, I have abilities that stack and fall off one at a time because now I've turned multiple triggers into duration. Like I really admire Atuma's design, and I've tried to learn a lot about it for my own. I thought the newest skill I was working on. That is an allegation, Magnus. Part of why I decided to save for the next feature because none of the champs in it would be disappointing to pull. As in, like this one on Tuesday. I do really like the group, yeah. Find Mangog valuable because of his survivability and boatload of utility, even though his damage is lacking. That's an interesting perspective, yeah. Because I would like us to tune up Mangog. But it's nice to hear that a lot of the parts to him were cool. Thing is very good, yeah. Don't know if I'm allowed to say, is there a reason there's no February monthly card? I think there is going to be a February monthly card. And maybe I'm not allowed to say that, but I'm pretty sure I saw one in the internal materials. Maybe it just isn't out yet. Because remember, January is a longer month, right? We haven't flipped over on versions yet. The EQ is still going, etc. You know what? I'm just going to go back to my hold page. I have no idea why my capture card is being dumb here, but we're just chatting at this point, and I'm not going to fix it before I go and get food. Hey, Bleezy. I've had design. Like the concept of reverse A. Yeah, Atuma's a really great design. The other thing I like about him is that I've talked about with Absorbing Man is that Atuma reads complicated and plays simple. And don't get me wrong, we as a studio are going to try and make sure that we ship a few read simple, play simple champions. We know that y'all like those. Um, but basically, I just like that when we have someone that does read complex because they have to read complex because that was how they needed to be designed, I do think it's very important that they play cleanly. And so Atuma and Carl, I think, do a good job of that. Future Ant-Man going to be an annoying war defender? He is, William, but we did test him on the armor up nodes. Oh, somebody asked earlier if he counters Havoc. Yes, he does. His personal armor ups do count as armor ups, which also means they're going to trigger those armor nodes that Gallon loves to go to. And as we saw, he kind of counters Gallon. Bring out your Hulklings. But we also tested him on the Chitinous Thorns node, because obviously that is the one, excuse me, that Gallon and Hulkling cannot take, because neither of them are bleed immune, and he handles it pretty well too. What am I having for lunch? I think I'm going to go to Cane's. I was told not to yesterday. I'm just going to go myself today. Has the list of champs in the featured crystal come out, or is it still just the leak? It's still just the leak. Yeah, nothing has been confirmed there. Have I discussed the Chavez and Gore balances? Not on the stream images, but I can talk about them real quick. I'm very happy with where they ended up. Chavez already had an amazing ceiling, right? It's just that her sustain was not awesome, and it was difficult to get to that ceiling in a lot of content. Now, the gap between her floor and her ceiling has been shrunk, because she only needs to get to 6 unique effects. And her sustain is better because additional dimensions fall off more slowly. Boom, she's great. I'm really, really happy with her, and I think that Pierce was an excellent addition to the kit for her Utopian Parallel. Thank Vega for that one. It was his suggestion. And then Gore, his maintenance is easier without need for synergies, and his Undermine feels usable now. That's enough for me. Can I unnerve Namor? It's been a long time, and the thing is, while it's definitely arguable Namor didn't need what he got, dude is really good. He is very underrated. He's just not a nuke. That's all there is to it. Like, if you're playing in a longer fight with Namor, he's not only good when you can reflect damage, right? He has sustain to him, and if you build up to those passive Furies, the dude closes out fights like very few people do. He's excellent. Something very refreshing about having a Colossus-type champ released once or twice a year. I agree. I also think that that's something that I aim for a bit more, maybe not in all of my reworks, but something that I aim for there, where my first rework I felt like I had to go from the ground up to preserve the parts that I cared about. The second one is going to be much simpler, where I'm just trying to build out the kit and modernize them without adding a whole bunch of complexity. Yeah, exactly. The damage cap counters the Harvest Slade. That's actually, honestly, why it's in the kit. Simple champs that have more complex features that reward strong gameplay are my favorite. I mean, the thing is that, like, that is still true for Atuma and Carl. It's just the way that you describe their extra complex features that reward the marginal increases requires a lot of text, and it's really easy to get lost in that extra text. And that's something we work on. Like, this would be such a massive overhaul, but something that would be kind of cool is if we could have like a simplified info page. It would be kind of nice if there was a toggle that you could put on where I could just give you Carl's kit in like 7 lines of text. Like his heavy makes him crit more. His special one gives him this mode with immunities and physical damage. His special 2 gives him this mode with these immunities and energy damage. His special 3 makes maintenance easier. His sig gives him regen. Like you could boil his kit down to that, and then it would just, I would need like one more line for he gets stronger when buffs end, he gets stronger when debuffs fail due to immunity. And then like you could ship him and people could read that and understand most of what they need to use him. The reason that that can't be his in-game info page is because that leaves so many questions unanswered for people who want that nuance or who want to know why did this just happen, right? And so we have to ship the info pages with the full explanations because we want them to be accurate. But it might be really nice going forward if we could potentially have a toggle between simplified and accurate info pages. Yeah, exactly, Char. Something like that too. Namor is still a menace. Namor is very good, yeah. Nice, Bleezy. I love Jabari. Doctor Strange is on the list. Have I done any reworks that are already out? No, not yet. I have one in the pipeline that's pretty much ready to go, but we're also kind of looking at that process and making sure that it's headed where we want it to go. Yeah, next few are Hulk, Spidey, Iceman. Champ release on a bi-monthly schedule. Yeah, that is our base schedule. So like Absorbing Man came out in January, my next one will come out in March, right? And then if I had started immediately after, well, now, then my next one would come out in May, but I'm actually taking a bit of a break to help with some other stuff. And so my third champion is currently slated for August. Kind of, Luke, but we don't want anyone to have to leave the game to get that kind of accurate info. If you want strategy tips and go to YouTube, fine. But like content creators outside of the app itself should never be necessary. They should be helpful. Have you tested Venom Pool versus Ant-Man Future? I mean, he's not a robot, so you still have the bleed problem because they don't get converted into degens, and you could glance, but it could work. That's funny, Zach. Yeah, Mangog is definitely on the list for tune-ups as well. Oh, I don't think I answered, or no, I did answer you, Char, that I was planning on grabbing canes. Yeah, I understand, Luke. And that is why we try and encourage content creators, right? It's part of why my channel existed in the first place, even before I got hired. But we want the information to technically be there in game, even if it's not always everything you would want to know about interactions, right? Any info on a sentry buff? No. I think he's on the list, but the weird thing about him is that his data isn't actually bad because he has that stupid bugged indestructible. So the only people who use Sentry are the ones that have him at max sig and are abusing the bug. And so it's kind of hard to get reliable data on what should change. Yeah, exactly, Luke. When Mangog eventually gets looked at, not making him worse on defense will be a major concern. Forgotten is keeping his stats high. Exactly. That's... Ugh. I want to fix that bug. I would feel better about fixing it if we had some kind of timeline on the buff, but also it's such a stupid bug that I wouldn't feel that guilty just flipping the switch tomorrow. We'll see. Could add a section of champ general rotations. That, I believe, that is the point of the champion videos section in the info pages, but for us to add more of those, because I know some members of the community have worked on them, for us to add more of those, somebody has to watch through them and evaluate them, and that itself is valuable cap, because there are only so many people at the company who really have the expertise to watch through a rotation video for a character and go, yes, that is good information. That is not leading someone astray. You have to be able to confidently say that before you put it in game and put our name on it. Yeah, the glossary is great, Martin. That's definitely something we're looking for. Hope I get the Iceman rework. I am not on the Iceman rework, but I have been talking to the person who's doing it, and I'm feeling pretty good about that one. All three of them. Thank you, work. Want to see a cable buff? Yeah, that's a tough one. Because even if you nerf the synergy, making cable easier to bring along makes Apocalypse stronger by proxy. It's dangerous. Rework, tune-up. We're pretty fluid on those terms now, Slade. It's not really a big deal. Do I know who's working on Black Panther Civil War? I do. We have a sheet where we put our names down. So yes, I'm aware of that information. All for some APOC love? Right. He's not absolutely busted anywhere he can get more than one code, MSD. He totally needs it. All right. I am enjoying this chat. I could probably sit here and keep going for a while. But I'm going to figure out what's going on with my capture card and probably restart OBS and go grab some food. Plus, I need to record my my spotlights with context. But if I have some extra time around those, I will catch y'all later. Thanks everyone for hanging out, and take care.